Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We are very excited to be sitting here with Jamie Wimberly, who is the CEO of DEFG, and we're going to talk about equity in the clean energy economy. So, Jamie, please introduce yourself.
Hi, Preet. First of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited about this opportunity because it's such an important topic. But I'm the CEO of DFG. We are a research and advisory firm focused on customer in the utility sector. We've been in business for almost 20 years. And we're doing really important work, not only on this, but on low income and arrearage management and a whole host of other things.
Let's dive into what we're here to talk about today. May seem very basic, but let's talk about what is equity.
That actually seems like a simple question, but it actually is fairly complex because equity means different things to different people. At core, it means, from a utility perspective, it meant affordability and access to energy to everyone, including low-income customers. But increasingly, equity means fairness and balance. Certainly means also looking at environmental justice. There's a racial component to it. And it also means looking at it from a time dimension perspective. So we have to realize that when we talk about equity, we're not only talking about the past, so decisions that had been made that impacted these communities, but also about the future and how to make these communities stronger to face some of the adverse impacts of climate change.
Well, I mean, that's a perfect transition into the ECEE. So tell us a little bit more about, what inspired you to start this, your core mission, and what some of the work that you guys are doing.
Yes. Well, first of all, I appreciate Vigilant's support of the ECEE Collaborative. That is Equity in the Clean Energy Economy Collaborative. And we started that because, first, as I just mentioned, we've been working on improving the low-income service model for a long time. And what we became concerned about, but also excited about in regard to equity and clean energy is that, on one hand, some concerns about affordability and access going forward and what these investments in electric vehicles and renewables, what that actually meant for these communities. And on the other hand, looking at it as an opportunity to invest in the restoration of these communities and bolstering them in a way that really kind of suits their needs. And so we, first and foremost, we're looking at equity through the lens of low-income and vulnerable communities and their needs. So that's where we start. But it's grown. The collaborative is like grown and grown and grown. We're almost up to 400 stakeholders nationally, representing a range of voices and perspectives, everything from community action agencies and advocates to utilities and vendors and financial institutions and environmentalists. And so it really is bringing together quite a diverse range of voices around a common platform in which to have good discussions.
I think one of the biggest challenges when you're trying to tackle something that is so important to so many people, but extremely ambiguous and kind of intangible in nature is how do you put structure to something like this? So the way that you've included some guiding principles for equity and structure has really resonated with me. Could you talk a little bit more about the principles for equity in the clean energy economy?
Well, again, since we're talking about people that are already struggling to pay their bills and usually have some amount of debt, affordability is paramount. So we need to basically come to a cleaner future, but still maintain affordability. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Secondly, obviously climate change is real. It's happening in ways that we didn't predict. And in fact, we've had recent examples of that with New Orleans, and even before that with what happened in Texas. That adversely impacted a lot of poor communities and folks that just they didn't have the means to get out, and so there was impacts on them. So there's clean is definitely a part of those principles. It's accessibility is another one, meaning again, going back to that traditional principle in the utility sector of anybody that wants electricity can have access to it. So again, thinking about the grid aspects to this and so on. And then finally, it is about equity. And equity is, as I said, I mean, it has various meanings, but in essence, it's about fairness and balance.
One of the biggest goals of the ECEE is driving effective collaboration. As you mentioned, you're working with stakeholders that are very diverse, but also each playing a very important role in this transition. Talk to me a little bit more about how the ECEE is focusing on driving effective collaboration and some of the key findings that you've noticed so far.
We established 6 tracks of work, and each of the tracks of work, there's going to be at least 3 to 4 deliverables per track. And the tracks cover everything like framework development, program design, regulatory and policy issues, voice of customer, meta-analysis, and so on. We are and have done so much work looking at low income, especially during COVID. So we've done a lot of work around contingency planning, and we're sharing that research. And so, Preetha, what you were referencing, we have been kind of at the forefront of trying to expedite federal funding, ERA funding, to help customers avoid evictions and also disconnects. So that funding can also be used not only to pay what you owe your landlord, but also can be used for any past due in terms of your utility bills. Unfortunately, most of that assistance has not been dispersed yet. And so I guess one of the things that we all need to remind ourselves when we talk about clean energy in the future is that there's probably 15 to 20% of any utility customer base that is struggling mightily and will continue to struggle even as we move out of COVID. And so what the findings that we just released were kind of what we call the scary truths. And essentially it's referencing again, that many customers did not pay fully or partially their utility bill. They have debts. Their assistance is running out. They've had a hard time getting assistance. They fully expect over the next 6 months or so that they're going to have trouble paying their utility bills and that debt. So again, why I say that is because that is our starting point in terms of looking at, overlaying this question of equity and in terms of, what we need to do going forward. Pretty much every 2 to 3 weeks now, we are on schedule to put out something new, which is all being made public. So, you can go to the ECEE website and download anything. So everything that we're doing is public and at no cost. And also membership is there's no cost to that too.
I mean, I think that's fantastic. You really are bringing together a very meaningful community. And, I know as members ourselves, we really value being able to have that insight, have those direct conversations, and have that curated content to really drive, solutions. For us, it's very much top of mind to think about, how do we leverage technology to create frictionless customer experiences that take into account a lot of the struggles that you've mentioned. People don't have time to sit and understand, their bills and additional charges. They're often subject to circumstances that, even very empathetic, utilities and, vendors ourselves have a hard time articulating and navigating. And I think having a resource where we can come together, discuss these solutions and really benefit from that exchange of information and direct engagement with the stakeholders themselves is invaluable.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Preet. I really do. Again, because this is a hard challenge. I mean, again, there's the broader challenge of how, in a organized, coordinated way that makes sense, how are we going to deal with climate change, period. But this is almost the nut within the nut, because basically some of those broader solutions like putting solar on people's roofs or, having subsidizing people to buy electric vehicles. I mean, that's great if you can afford to do that, to have a house, to have a car. But again, there are a significant segment of customers that they just don't have those resources. So we need to think differently and better in order to also serve them. And that's going to take all of us. I mean, one of the things I appreciate, when we have our conversation with Ann Becker and Will Ellis, they've shown leadership not only in terms of thinking it proactively through as a utility executive, but also I know personally they've taken this challenge to heart. And so, again, I think there's an opportunity by looking at equity and how we're going to move forward to kind of define the future of the utility space and moreover, get back to this shared sense of mission.
How can our audience members, how can the utilities and activists in our audience join ECEE and get involved in what you're doing?
It's easy to sign up. Just go to our website. It's on the screen here, www.eceecollaborative.com.
Hi, Anne. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this really important conversation. I appreciate it.
Thank you. We're thrilled to have you. So I thought we could start off. Could you just share a little bit about yourself and your role?
Yeah, my name is Ann Becker, and I'm the Vice President of Sustainability with Arizona Public Service Company. My team and I focus almost exclusively on ESG, which is a term of art in the investor world that is becoming much more common in the non-investor world. And the E stands for environmental stewardship, the S stands for social responsibility, and the G stands for corporate governance. And so we are very focused on each of those areas. And they all roll up to our clean energy commitment, which I'm excited to talk about and share with you.
That's fantastic. And could you share a little bit more about the clean energy commitment?
Yeah, absolutely. So we about 18 months ago, my company and I announced a commitment to achieve 100% clean, carbon-free electricity by 2050. I'm really excited about that commitment. I am proud to work for a company that believes the climate science and that has made these bold and aggressive commitments to do our part to help achieve a net zero economy by 2050. There really are two things in particular that I'm proud of that I think set our clean energy commitment apart from that of a lot of our peers. And the first is our commitment to eliminate carbon emissions entirely. Many of our peers have committed to achieving what's called net zero carbon emissions, which is a very different thing than absolute zero carbon emissions. Our CEO purposefully chose to commit to absolute zero because he wants to signal to the market the urgent need for innovation right now. And the second thing that sets us apart, and the other thing I'm really proud of, is our commitment to provide transition assistance and support to our legacy coal communities. And I will come back and talk about that a little bit more.
Now, I imagine with such a fantastic goal set so far in the future, there are some milestones you're hoping to achieve along the way. Could you share some of those?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have set milestones. And our milestones, so we've got a goal of absolute zero by 2050. Our milestones are to achieve 65% clean and 45% renewables in our generation fleet by 2030. And we also have committed to completely exit coal-fired generation by 2031.
That's incredible. So can you tell me a little bit more about how you're helping to make those transitions happen?
So we know that the climate science is real. We know that we have to act, and we are very committed to doing our part. So we made our clean energy commitment. But the other thing that we realized in the course of making our commitment is the importance of ensuring that we also provide transition support to the legacy coal communities that will be left behind. We have a very long-standing and solid partnership with the communities in which we have lived and worked and operated for more than 50 years. And so it's very important to us as part of this transition that we not leave those folks behind. I will share with you, frankly, that I think that one of the mistakes of the Obama administration was neglecting to pay attention to coal communities. And I also believe that one of the reasons that Donald Trump was elected was because he did pay attention to coal communities. I'm not sure that he necessarily had the right focus, but he understood the importance of ensuring that we don't leave those folks behind. And so a very important component of our clean energy commitment is to ensure that we are partnering with those communities that we are providing transition support, and I can talk about what that looks like in a little more detail, and that we are helping them to plan for this exit. And our coal plants aren't closing for some time yet. We've got 2 plants. One is closing in 2025, and we announced that closure in 2015. And the other plant is closing in 2031. So we've got some runway here. And we decided to take advantage of that runway to work with these communities to develop some transition plans to ensure that they are prepared to make this transition from a fossil fuel-based economy to a clean economy.
So I'm very interested in how this transition will play out. But before that, could you specifically share some more about how these communities will specifically be impacted by these changes?
Yeah, absolutely. So the plant that I really want to focus on is our coal plant that's located on the Navajo Nation, and it's called the Four Corners Power Plant. And the Four Corners Power Plant comprises a pretty large chunk of the general fund of the Navajo Nation. There were 2 plants on the Navajo Nation, the Four Corners plant, which is still operational and which, as I mentioned, will close in 2031. And there's a second plant called the Navajo Generating Station, which was operated by Salt River Project, one of our sister electric utilities here in Arizona. And the Navajo Generating Station closed in 2019. Those 2 coal plants, together with the mines that supplied the coal to those plants, comprised about 70% of the total general fund of the Navajo Nation, 70%. So you think about the impact of these plant closures on the Navajo Nation, and also on the Hopi Nation, which was impacted by the closure of the Kayenta coal mine, which supplied the Navajo Generating Station. And these decreases in revenues mean decreases in social programs, in health programs, in educational programs, decreases probably in the size of the government for the Navajo Nation and the Hopi government. It's a tremendous hit to these rural communities who have depended upon the revenues generated from coal mining and coal plant operations for their entire lives. So our departure from the Navajo Nation is going to have a significant impact on the nation, and we recognized that, and we wanted to make sure that we addressed that as a really important component of this clean energy transition.
That's fascinating. So how will you specifically be partnering with the Navajo Nation and other communities that are impacted by this transition?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our commitment to the Navajo Nation includes about $128 million total, and it's a mix of shareholder and customer dollars. There are several different components of the plan, and I want to talk about each one because each one is a really important part of the plan. And each one also is a component that we heard from the stakeholders, including the Navajo Nation, were very important to them as part of this coal community transition planning. So we've committed $100 million total in transition support to the Navajo Nation to be paid over 10 years. We've also committed $1.25 million in economic development support that will be paid over 5 years. And that time frame is 2 years before the plant closes and then 3 years after the plant closes. We've committed about $17.5 million in transmission support. And we've committed $10 million to electrify Navajo homes. 70% of the homes in the United States that don't have electricity are located on the Navajo Nation. And one of the things that we saw with COVID was the impact on these less privileged communities, and the impact as a result of the lack of access to clean water and the lack of access to electricity. So it was very important to us, and frankly, very important to the Navajo Nation, that electrification of Navajo homes be an important component of our commitment. We also have committed to offer all of the plant employees different jobs within the APS business, within the enterprise, within 6 months before plant closure. And then finally, another important component here, the Navajo Nation really is committed to evolving from a fossil fuel-based economy to a clean energy economy. And so clean energy was an important part of their ask as part of this package. And so we have committed to issue RFPs for 600 megawatts of clean energy projects that are located on or near the Navajo Nation. So that's our commitment to the Navajo Nation. We also offered comparable plans to the Hopi tribe and to Navajo County here in Arizona, which is where our Cholla power plant is located. And altogether, our entire coal community transition commitment is valued at about $144 million.
That's incredible. You have to be really proud of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that, the folks in these communities are our coworkers, they are our friends, they are our family. And we just recognized how important it was to do what we can to help them make this transition. And I will tell you, is $144 million enough to effectively transition from fossil to clean energy? No, it's not enough. It's based on about 2 years worth of economic impact of the plant in the area. So when we were developing the numbers and looking at how we could come up with a proposal, we landed on a proposal that was based on about 2 years worth of the economic impact of the plant in terms of employees, taxes, coal royalties, and that sort of thing. So 2 years worth of support is help. It's helpful, absolutely. Is it enough? No. And we know that more needs to be done. And in that space, one of the things that we've been doing is working with some folks in Washington, D.C. to really lobby for federal legislation that would require transition planning, advance notice of plant closure, and partnerships with these communities to help them figure out how they are going to evolve to a more sustainable energy future. So we've been working really hard with Representative O'Halloran, who has some legislation called the New Promise Act that would do exactly that. We are big fans and advocates of a federal approach to ensure consistency in this space. What we have seen is that a lot of companies who are departing from coal plants either do nothing or do a little bit, but there's not a consistent approach. And so from our perspective, in order for this transition to work and to be effective and to really support these rural communities that are going to be in dire straits, it's really important that we've got a consistent federal approach.
What do you hope that other utilities can take away from this so far?
What we are hoping that other utilities will take away from this is that our process really, I think, established a good model that other utilities can follow. We were really committed to stakeholder engagement before we announced our commitment. It was really important to us to understand what was important to the Navajo Nation. We can sit here and guess what's important to them. But we actively engaged with the Navajo Nation to understand what was really important to them. And then separately, we also engaged with a fairly large group of external stakeholders that included environmental NGOs, community representatives, and others to understand what was important from their perspective. And so I think, it's a good model for other utilities to emulate as they are thinking about their own exits from their legacy fossil fuel-fired generation facilities.
That's really incredible. Thank you so much for sharing.
Can you please tell us about Pepco's commitment to investing in clean energy technology?
At Pepco, we recently released our climate change commitment. That includes reducing our emissions as a whole by 50% by the year 2030. Not only that, we're committed to converting half of our fleet to electric by 2030 as well. Our initiatives include modernizing our electric and gas infrastructure to reduce emissions, focusing on energy efficiency for our buildings and our operations, as well as investing in cleaner technology for our systems as well.
Tell us about Pepco and Exelon's broader commitment to energy and equity.
Our employees live, work, and fellowship in the communities we serve. And we want to ensure that our communities are thriving as they transition to this clean energy future.
How do you define equity?
For me personally, it's ensuring our minority communities who have been systematically oppressed for years are achieving the benefits and the promise that they are entitled to. And that is understanding what is preventing them from participating, ensuring that we're removing the barriers so that they can achieve the benefits that other communities have naturally granted to them.
What steps has Pepco taken to promote equity in the community?
Our goal is to deliver innovative and unique solutions for all of our customers to meet their energy goals. And that starts by delivering programs such as our energy efficiency or electric vehicle programs while maintaining affordability and reliability within the system. I truly believe that helping our customers manage their energy usage, achieving greater affordability, comfort in their homes, and reducing emissions as a whole is just one way we are committed to driving equity within the communities we serve. One of the initiatives that we are working on is increasing minority participation in our electric vehicle, energy efficiency, and our solar programs. Our programs have been nationally recognized for years as it relates to our commitment to our communities. But we are taking that a step further. We are actively addressing barriers that are preventing some of our customers from participating. And we want to ensure that our most vulnerable customers, those who need our programs the most, are achieving the benefits that they are promised to achieve. I think this goes to the reasons why utilities were created, to ensure safe and reliable energy for all of our customers. And we know here at Pepco that we're only as good as the communities we serve. And we want to ensure that our communities are thriving by creating innovative and equitable solutions for all of our customers.
How does data play a role in providing equitable service?
Data allows us to drive solutions that can help increase equity in our communities that we serve.
So I know propensity modeling is a big part of your approach. Can you tell me a little bit more how you're utilizing that?
Sure. Propensity modeling is great for maximizing investments, looking at what customers are most likely to participate based on historical projections. But we're taking a more data-driven approach where we call total marketing and ensuring that we are understanding the unique needs of all customers and making sure that customers who have historically been underrepresented in our programs are able to participate moving forward. We leverage data by examining our participation both demographically and geographically to find out what customers are underrepresented in program participation. That includes understanding barriers to participation, whether that's financially, culturally, educational awareness, or even policy decisions that is preventing certain pockets of customers from participating, and we want to ensure that those benefits are being achieved by all customers. We leverage this data through our EU analytics teams, our customer focus groups, as well as benchmarkings to create a strategy that can drive customer participation for all.
Tell us a little bit more about why customers aren't participating in programs because of awareness or lack thereof.
In the past, barriers to participation centered around financial needs. But as I started to look at my circle and seeing my friends who would set their thermostat on 68 degrees year round, or friends who would have incandescent bulbs in their ceiling or fridge still in a garage, I understand that barriers to participation vary geographically and demographically to understand what was preventing them from participating in our programs.
How do you personalize your messaging to create a message that resonates with your customers?
Wow, that's the million-dollar question. For me, it all starts with trust. A quote I always come back to is people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And that's the same with our marketing. Our customers have to trust in what we say. So we want to ensure that we are partnering with them to create a trusted energy advisor, as well as the ability for them to see themselves in the marketing that we produce.
How is Pepco making it easier for customers to transition to EVs?
Back in 2019, we created our EV Digital Toolkit. It's an interactive website that allows customers to find more information about purchasing an electric vehicle. That includes charging maps, buyer's guides, you name it. A real interactive website that can be a one-stop shop for any customers who is in the market to purchase an EV.
How is Pepco providing EV customers with more benefits so that they can maximize their experience?
We thought very strategically about the program's offerings that we wanted the Commission to approve. We first started with our residential EV program, where we have rebates for customers to install level 2 chargers at their home, to charge off peak, and to reduce grid build out. We also have our EV public charging program like this one, where we're trying to increase EV adoption throughout our counties in Maryland. And then lastly, we have our multi-dwelling program that aims at reducing barriers for our rental population to purchase EVs. So we are partnering actively with property managers and building owners to install EV charging at those rental properties as well.
So tell us about some of the challenges Pepco is encountering in terms of identifying residential customers with EVs, and to address those visibility gaps. What technology, what tools are you using to help out?
Ricky, that's a great question. Right now, most of our identification techniques is all through customers self-identifying, whether that's through participating in our rebate program or letting us know through our website that they are an EV owner. In the future, we're leveraging our analytics data through our AMI technology to hopefully pinpoint those customers through their charging habits who have EVs. And so that will help us better plan for our grid as we look to build out our grid to handle this future adoption.
How did these EV smart projects come to fruition?
The Maryland Public Service Commission approved our EV public charging program back in mid of 2019. And we wanted to ensure that all of our communities can benefit from this clean energy transition. And not just those that had high EV adoption currently, but as we plan for the future, we wanted to increase awareness for all of our communities so that they can adequately plan for EVs for the future.
Will, you're clearly passionate about this. What drives you to be a champion of environmental justice?
For me, I think it starts with my upbringing. Growing up in the under-resourced community, but a community that was filled with love. I battled asthma a lot, and I can remember spending countless nights in the emergency room, missing class. Or even I was able to go to school, being uncomfortable in my home, doing homework with my jacket on. And then tell me, I'm grateful for the upbringing and the things that my parents have instilled in me, but it wasn't until I went to college that I was able to understand that this wasn't the norm. And for me, everything I do is trying to give back to my community so that others who have grew up in a like situation as I don't have to experience the same thing. So yes, maybe I have made it through the storm, but I wanted to make it a little easier so that others don't have to go through that same storm.
Tell us a little bit about your role in ECEE.
I just love it. You know, partnering with ECEE in this collaborative is a way for us to come together as joint utilities to talk about equity and how to best to address the inequities in the communities we serve. So we're really grateful for this partnership and looking for ways to reduce these inequities, increase participation, and ensure that all of our customers and the communities that we can serve can achieve the benefits and the promise of a clean energy future.
Hello, everyone. It's fantastic to have everyone live for a live Q&A session with the speakers that we just heard from, Anne, Jamie, and Will. I'd love to just dive right into it because we have a kind of short amount of time. The first question I have, it was really lovely to see and support your efforts to ensure communities benefit equitably from the clean energy transition. If each of you could just share quickly, what are some of the accomplishments that you're most proud of? We can start with Anne. From left to right. So Anne, Will, and then Jamie.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we are very proud of the coal community transition commitment that my company has made. You know, my team is very focused on ESG, and social responsibility is one of those big focus areas. And so when we thought about what does it mean to be a socially responsible company, we realized that one of the most important things that we can do, and frankly, one of our obligations as a socially responsible company, is to ensure that we are doing everything we can to support those communities as these coal plants begin to close down. We know that when plants close, there are lost revenues, there's a lost tax base, there are jobs that are lost. And so, you know, economically, the closure of a plant it's devastating. And so we are very proud that we really have set a model for the rest of the country to follow in terms of how to engage with stakeholders and how to identify what the priorities of these communities are, and then how to build a commitment around those priorities. And so it's something that I take a lot of pride in, and I'm very proud of my company for being willing to go above and beyond what's legally required to do the right thing.
Fantastic. Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And, you know, for me, I would say, you know, during my tenure overseeing our energy efficiency and customer facing programs, I would probably say I'm most proud of the work that we're doing around our small business program and focusing on increasing opportunities in our opportunity zones and really growing our contractor and trade ally community, as well as creating a 0% financing program to remove that cost barrier from participating and trying to create more equitable participation within the program. You know, for so many of our communities, our small business is that rock, that center of the community. And we have ensured that our small business programs, we can reach those customers who need our help the most in retrofitting establishments like barbershops or salons or corner stores. And, you know, for me, what does that mean? And I grew up, of course, going to the barbershop, but a barbershop is just more than just a place where you can get your hair cut. It's a place of refuge, a place of mentoring, a place of networking, as well as a hub for commerce within the community. So going into these shops, retrofitting their lighting or replacing their HVAC, where business owners can lower their energy usage and lower their monthly bills, and to know that that money gets reinvested directly into the communities we serve is, for me, the reasons why we do what we do. And so that's something I'm very proud of for the team.
It's fantastic. I think both of you are speaking to really great, grassroots movement that we're building relationships with the community to get these done, which makes it really feel like a strong accomplishment, the people we're working with. Jamie?
Well, thanks, Sophia. First of all, thank you to you and Visually. This has been great. And Ann and Will, you guys are doing some wonderful, wonderful work. So really pleased to be on this panel with you. Our firm, DEFG, has had a longstanding commitment to low-income and at-risk communities, and we've touched many different facets of their experience and trying to make it easier to get energy assistance to them and so forth. Very proud of that work, just because it has it's made a demonstrable difference in a lot of people's lives. In terms of the collaborative, it was earlier this year that we just basically looked at this question of clean energy and the transition and started to think about what that meant for people that were already struggling to pay their bills, and put together the collaborative. And now we're at 400 plus stakeholders representing a very diverse group of different interests, utilities, regulators, advocates, environmentalists. So a lot of different perspectives. I think we're doing really, really important work. Especially pleased about our efforts to bring the voice of those customers and communities into the broader discussion. And so, again, I think we're doing good work, but we have a lot more ahead of us. And anyone who's listening that would like to join the collaborative, you can join at no charge. So I hope you do so.
Absolutely. That's great. Definitely check out Jamie's collaborative. And you can feel free to learn more about it in the chat. I have a question from the audience and for you. Speaking a little bit about, how we kind of pay for all of these developments and changes that we have to do. What are some of the expected impacts on rates as shareholders and ratepayers to support this?
It's a great question. And, we know there are costs associated with building, operating, and then decommissioning power plants. And under the traditional regulated utility model, our customers pay for these costs as long as they were prudently incurred. And we view our coal community transition commitment as part of the ordinary course of doing business, much like our plant decommissioning costs, which our customers pay for in rates. And so if our proposal is adopted as we have proposed it, our rates would increase on average about 0.36%. So for a customer, just to put that in perspective, for a customer with a $250 monthly bill, that's about 9 cents each month, or about $1 a year. And so it's a very nominal cost.
Great.
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick. We started the collaborative with the premise that we have to maintain affordability. Again, we cannot forget that there is a significant number of Americans that are in debt and are struggling to pay their utility bills as it is. So to Ann's point, though, I think that we can do this clean energy transition in a way that works for all citizens, and maintaining those affordable rates is a very important part of that discussion.
Absolutely. Transitioning a little bit, I have a question for Will around identifying customers. You spoke about small businesses. Can you speak to how do you identify those customers, whether it be information with income, geography, or other ways of intelligence that you have to make sure that you're understanding what their needs and motivations are?
Yeah, great question. All of our customers are different. They're different needs, whether they're working from home or in school from home or travel a lot for work. So, for us, it's about being in the communities that we serve, getting to know our customer base and understanding their needs so we can create better solutions that will ultimately help them thrive in what their goals are. Many of our communities and jurisdictions have goals towards clean energy. And so we know we have to create programs that impact the buildings environment, the transportation sector. So really trying to understand how can we create programs? What are our customers' needs? How can we work with the community to hear from them specifically? What ideas do they have? Because, we don't have all of the best ideas. And we know that the best ideas come from partnerships and creating relationships where we can have a back and forth dialogue to be able to create those solutions and pilot programs and learn fast to be able to really drive us forward down this path.
I could not agree more. That's a great answer. Just to close it out, 10 seconds each. What keeps you up at night? There's so much work to still be done to ensure equity for all of our communities. What's maybe the one thing that kind of still keeps you up? We'll go from left to right again. So Anne, Will, and then Jamie.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think, equity at the end of the day keeps me up. We have seen since, I think, really a heightened focus on social equity since COVID. We've seen the disparities that these events like COVID can drive. And I think, accelerated decarbonization, the shift to clean energy is another kind of momentous occasion when there is, lots of opportunity to either further or rectify these disparities in wealth and the disparities in equity generally. And so, from my piece, I want to do everything we can to ensure that we are making smart decisions to drive equity.
Yeah, and quickly to piggyback off that, a mentor of mine said, because America did not fulfill its promise of equality, that is the reason why we need equity. With that, equity is an equality, and equality isn't easy, towards Jamie say. So we have a lot of work to go.
Yeah, and for me, real quick, I'm really hoping that we end a cycle of top-down decision-making that actually could do more harm than good to some of these communities. So I think, again, we need to really focus on looking at these communities in terms of who they are and what they want.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. And please join us for next session by clicking the watch next session at the bottom. Thank you.